Mark Schultz is a platinum-selling artist who is an 18-time Dove Award nominee, including Artist of the Year, Song of the Year, Album of the Year, Writer of the Year, and Male Vocalist of the Year. Mark has been featured on CNN, ABC, 2020, and as a special guest on Extreme Home Makeover. Mark has had 13 #1 songs in his career. Please put your hands together for Mark Schultz.
Man, I just got a one-table standing ovation right there in the middle. Thank you so much for that. That was unbelievable. That's all I wanted. Good night, everybody. Thanks. Hey, I'm thrilled to be here. And when Kay asked me if I would come and do this, I said absolutely. And I was telling Roland the other day, I was adopted when I was 2 weeks old. I said it's the hardest 2 weeks of my life with the paperwork and everything. But I got the best parents in the world. And the reason I'm thrilled to be here tonight is because it would have been an organization like yours, and it would have been somebody like you that would have stepped in the gap for me when my birth mom was trying to decide if she was going to give me life or have an abortion. And you stepped in the gap for me before I had a voice. And I'm here because of you. So I just want to say thank you. Thank you for that, and I'm grateful for it. Roland spoke about the men's program that they've got. I'm thrilled about it. In Nashville, they said, hey, would you help us come down? It was a pregnancy center. Would you help us come down? And we've got a men's program, and we think you'd be a great mentor to help our men get jobs, keep jobs, and learn how to be dads. And so I said, oh, sure, I'll do that. And so I went down there, and they said, here's your guy. His name's Trey. And Trey said, so you're going to help me get a job and keep a job? And I said, sure. And he said, well, what do you do for a living? And I said, well, I do music. And he goes, well, what does that mean? And I go, well, I go around the country and do shows. And he goes, oh, great. How are you supposed to help me get a job? You don't even have a real job. And he was right. It was true. But he started to listen to Christian music, started to listen to my songs. And I wrote this song for him. And I want to sing it tonight because I realize it's what you all do every day. It's a song called No Place Love Won't Go. And I realize when women walk into your offices, one of the greatest things you do is convince them that there's a God that loves them and pursues their heart and is ready to help them change their story. And so I thought we'd do it together. It's a sing-along part. So it just goes like this. I'm going to sing, oh, 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 and y'all sing, but maybe louder and better. And then, oh, 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 oh. And if you know that, you pretty much know the whole song. So here we go. Don't know how I wound up here. Don't know where it all went wrong. I bought into the lies and nearly lost it all. Yet in the midst of fear, is it your voice I hear telling me I'm worthy, saying that just for me, love will walk through any storm. We'll see you through it all. Or can it be there's no place love won't go? As hopeless as it seems, no, you're not out of reach. There's no place love won't go. Oh, 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 oh. No place love won't. Well, I know you're a lot like me, and I know that it's hard to see. There is a greater plan when you don't understand. You're not a victim of the pain you can't outrun. He took your burden, he came to set you free. Love will walk through any storm, we'll see you through it all. Oh, can it be there's no place love won't go? As hopeless as it seems, no, you're not out of reach. There's no place love won't go. Oh, 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 oh. No place love won't. 'Cause your God, he longs to meet you no matter where you are. His arms are gonna reach you. You never gone too far. 'Cause love will walk through any storm. We'll see you through it all. Oh, can it be there's no place love won't go? As hopeless as it seems, no, you're not out of reach. There's no place love won't go. Oh, 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 oh. place love won't go. Oh, oh. Oh, oh, oh. Oh, oh, oh. No place love won't go. Pretty good, really. I just got another one-table standing ovation. This is an unbelievable night for me so far. Hey, is it okay if I introduced you to my family? Would that be okay? Great, I didn't bring them, but I got some pictures, and honestly, kids would have been cuter in these pictures. So they're really, really young. But this is my oldest son now, Ryan, a young picture of him. He's really cute. I'm telling you that. You're going to go, oh my gosh, he's cute, but just go ahead and look. I know, he's still out in the grass, rolling around. We haven't brought him inside yet. He's still out there. We think another year to toughen him up. And then you look at that picture and you're like, oh my gosh, he's cute. And I'm sure he's never been in trouble before, and that's not true. He is this kid sometimes. And then sometimes he turns into this guy right here. And I told his mom, you can't put a boy in a green bumbo next to a green leafy plant. That's emasculating, you know? Really awful, but his mom's an OBGYN, catches them for a living, you know? And so she's really smart, loves education. And so when he was like 2, he walks into the house, and he's got that vocabulary thing from his mom. And he walks in, he goes, Daddy, look, I got a plethora of leaves. I'm like, well, you might be grounded until I figure out what that means. No idea. Apparently, it's not a bad word. And so that's the oldest one I've got. Then he's got a younger brother named Gus. And who's got kids out there, by the way? Just wondering. You know how you can have 2 kids from the same gene pool, but they hang out on different ends of the pool? You know what I mean? Just the genes didn't match up. Gus is more like me. He just smiles. He's just happy to be there, you know? Even when he's sleeping, he's smiling. You're like, oh, there's no way. But it's true. This is Gus taking a nap right here. And so I'm going to show you a picture of their mom reading them a book on the couch. And I just want to see if you can pick out the one who's really dialed into education and maybe the one that's not as dialed into education, you know? They're brothers, so it's hard. So you just have to look really close, see if you can pick it out. My wife and Ryan are just like, they might as well be in Disneyland with all those words on the page, you know? They're so excited. And Gus is like, there's not near as many pictures as there needs to be in this book for me to even care at all. And so Ryan usually blows out the candles at night if we have a candlelight dinner special time. And Gus was like, hey, can I blow out the candles because it's my birthday? And coming up, and I need practice. And I said, okay. And he goes, okay, get the camera ready. And so this is Gus blowing out the candles at our house for the first time.
Try again, baby.
Keep going, keep going. Don't touch it, don't touch it.
Just try to blow it out.
Gotta blow it out.
So that's what we're working with at my house right now. And we're thinking homeschool on that deal, probably. We don't know. But I show you those pictures because a few years ago I was getting ready to walk on stage for an adoption benefit, and a lady said, hey, are you adopted? I said, yeah. And she said, have you ever met your birth mom? And I said, no. And she said, do you think you will? And I said, I don't know. Seems kind of weird if I just showed up now and I was like, hey, remember me? I got about the same amount of hair as the last time she would have seen me, but I said it was probably just a selfish time in her life, and she just gave me up for adoption, and it's okay. And this lady grabbed a hold of my collar, and she pulls me in. I'm getting there introducing me, you know, and I'm about to get beat up by a 75-year-old. And she said, did you say selfish? And I said, I'm just trying to get to the stage without getting beat up. And she said, let me ask you something. This is a true story. Let me ask you something. She said, have you ever been pregnant before? And I was honest, and I said no. And she said, for a young lady to carry you for 9 months, that wasn't out of selfishness. And then she said, to go through the pain of giving birth to you, that was not out of selfishness. And she said, and most importantly, in your specific case, not everybody's, but yours, she would have held you and said, I want to give you the best possible life I can, but I realize that I'm not able to do that right now. But I know that there's a family that's praying for someone like you. And she would have kissed you on the head, and she would have given you to a nurse who would have given you to your mom and dad who would have given you the life that you have now. I can guarantee it wasn't out of selfishness that you were born. You were born out of love. and my jaw hit the floor because I'd never thought of my birth mom as being a hero before, but I do now. And I never thought another standing ovation. And I never thought that the people in this room were champions for those moms who are making a choice for life, and you're on the front lines with those moms. But I do now. And that's why I'm so honored to be up here with you now. And a while back, I rode my bike across the country to raise money for orphans and widows. I did concerts all along the way, and we raised $250,000 for orphans and widows. Seemed like a really good idea until I did it. And I realized it's a long way across the country, but I had time to think about my birth mom. I had time to think about the role that you played in my birth mom's life. And I wrote this song as a tip of the hat to what you've done, as a tip of the hat to what my birth mom, the choice you helped her make. And it's one of the best decisions. And I'm just grateful that I get to be here. Must have felt your tears when they took me from your arms. I'm sure I must have heard you say goodbye. Young and so afraid, had you made a big mistake? Or could an ocean even hold the tears you cried? But you had dreams for me, you wanted the best for me, and you made the only choice you could that night. And you gave life to me, a brand new world to see, like playing baseball in the yard with Dad at night. Mom reading goodnight moon, praying in my room. So if you worry if your choice was right, when you gave me up, oh, you gave everything to me. And if I saw you on the street, would you know that it was me? Would your eyes be blue or green like mine? Would we share a warm embrace? Would you know me in your heart? Or would you smile and let me walk on by, knowing you had dreams for me, you wanted the best for me? Oh, I hope that you'll be proud of who I am. You gave life to me, I'm to find my dreams, and the chance to fall in love. You should have seen her shining face on our wedding day. Oh, is this a dream you had in mind? When you gave me up, oh, you everything to me. And when I see you there, watching from heaven's gates, into your arms I'm gonna run. And when you look in my eyes, you can see my whole life, see who I was and who I become. You gave life to me, a brand new world to see, like playing baseball with my sons late at night, and reading goodnight moon, praying in their room. Well, I'm so grateful that I've had this life. When you gave me up, oh, you everything me, everything to me, everything to me. Wow. Oh, man. Thanks, y'all. I wasn't expecting that. I was just expecting one table. Thank you so much. That's way more tables than I thought. Well, I've been adopted a few times in my life, once when I was 2 weeks old and once when I was 24. I graduated from Kansas State University with a marketing degree so that I could go to Nashville, Tennessee and become a professional waiter. And I had no place to live, and so I was driving into town, and I answered an ad in the paper, and I drove to this house that had a room to rent, and so I drove into the driveway, and I said, this looks like an okay place with a white picket fence, and this mature couple came out the driveway, and they said, can we help you? And I said, yeah, I think I live here. And they said, we've lived here for 42 years, and we've never seen you before. We think you live next door at the shack. And I live next door at the shack. And so I moved my car and I unloaded my bag, and then I got a telephone call from the lady that I just met in her driveway. And she said, well, Henry and I have been talking, and we don't think you can feed yourself, so you need to come on back over here for dinner. And I didn't realize at the time, but their names were Henry and Liz grew up with Minnie Pearl off of Hee Haw, if you've ever seen Hee Haw before. So it was like moving in next to Hee Haw. I went over to the house, and I never met a Southern person before, and they scared me a little bit because they fried everything before they ate it, you know. And so Liz would get a chicken fried steak, and she'd bring it over, and she'd cut it into little squares, you know, for me because I was only 24. And Henry goes, hey, did I ever tell you about the first time I took Liz on a date? And I was like, no, because I didn't even know you people, you know, at all. And he said, well, she used to live here, and so I walked to her house when I turned 18, and I asked her dad if I could take her on a date. And her dad said, son, it's my only daughter. If you're going to take her on a date, you're going to walk her to the movies, and you're going to walk her home, and you're going to promise me you never leave her side. And I love that story. But Henry told it to me every single night for 9 months because he would forget that he told it to me the night before. But I was always hungry, so I just acted like I never heard it before. And I moved away to the other side of town. I became a youth director at church, and I got duct taped to a bed by a bunch of seventh graders, and I just never left. And so 5 years later, I called Henry. I said, if I ever write a song for them, it's got to be called Walking Her Home, because basically that's the only story that Henry remembers. So I called Henry 5 years later. I go, Henry, I think I got your song done. He goes, good, because time's ticking. We're in the nursing home. And so I went to the nursing home, and they're just two of them. It's 2 o'clock in the afternoon at a table, and they have their lunch on the table, a lasagna for Henry, a lasagna for Liz, and a lasagna next to Liz cut into squares. And I said, hey, your song's not quite done, but I got as much of it as I got, you know. And so they wanted to hear it, and I'm singing it to them. They're holding hands, and I said, it doesn't have a last verse yet. And they didn't care. And after that was done, they got up, and they gave me a big hug, and then Henry puts his arm out. And Liz gets in there and starts shuffling like a quarter mile an hour down to the room, and it was like, I don't know, it was like 3:30, and they were all the way to the end of the hallway in their room. I thought at 4, they're going to have to make a U-turn and come back for dinner. They're just that slow, and I was laughing. And then as I'm watching her walk her down the hall, I stopped laughing, and I said, Henry, you just written the rest of my song for me, because I realized when he promised her father he was going to walk her home and never leave her side, he wasn't talking about the movies. And so one of my favorite stories about Henry and Liz is my first Christmas in Nashville. I was going nowhere fast, and Liz put the telephone on the table, one of the old one, you know. And she goes, she put it on the table, and she goes, well, you need to call your folks. And I said, what for? And I knew it was Christmas because she put some holly on the chicken fried steak. And she said, well, Henry and I have been talking. And we decided if we had a son like you trying to make it in the world today, we'd want somebody to look after him. So you just tell your folks they've got nothing to worry about because you just got adopted by Henry and Liz. And so this is a song for 2 of my favorite people in Nashville. Looking back, he sees it all. It was her first date the night he came to call. And her dad said, son, have her home on time, and promise me you'll never leave her side. He took her to a show in town, and he was 10 feet off the ground. He was walking her home and holding her hand. Oh, the way she smiled and stole the breath right out of him. Down that old road with the stars up above, he remembers where he was the night he fell in love. He was walking her home. 10 more years in a waiting room. At 1:30, it's when the doctor said, come in and meet your son. And his knees went weak when he saw his wife. She was smiling as she said, he's got your eyes. And as she slept, he held her tight. His mind went back to that first night. He was walking her home and holding her hand. Oh, the way she smiled and stole the breath right out of him. And down that old road with the stars up above, he remembers where he was the night he fell in love. He was walking her home, and he walked her through the best days of her life. 60 years together, and he never left her side. A nursing home at 85, and the doctor said it could be her last night. And the nurse said, oh, should we tell him now, or should he wait until the morning to find out? But when they checked her room that night, he was laying by her side. He was walking her home and holding her hand. Oh, the way she smiled when he said, this is not the end. And just for a while, they were 18, and she was still more beautiful to him than anything. He was walking her home. He was walking her home. Looking back, he sees it all. It was her first date the night he came to call. Thanks, y'all. Oh, thanks, y'all. Yeah. Thanks, y'all. Well, I asked my mom if she would tell me a story of when I was adopted, because I knew it had to be awesome. And she said, we lived in Kansas, and we had to drive all the way to the other side of Kansas. There's never anybody from Kansas here, and I'm so excited about that. And we drove outside of Kansas until we came to this big white house. It was an adoption agency house, Gone with the Wind kind of thing. And we'd never seen a house that big. It was big and white. And we walked in the front door, and then we walked up these big Gone with the Wind steps, and we walked up there to this room, and there was a crib in the room, and you were laying in the crib, and we had to decide if we were going to adopt you or not. So we looked at you, and then we went to lunch, and I was like, that's a horrible story, Mom. And they came back from lunch, and then my mom looked at me, and then she looked at my dad, and looked at me, and looked at my dad, and she goes, well, what do you think? And I'm like, I think you would have talked about that at lunch, is what I think. But anyway, apparently my dad looks at me and he goes, I'm in, you know? And I said, that story never got better, Mom. And then 24 years later, I'm in Nashville, and Henry and Liz feed me every night for 9 months. And I gained 30 pounds in those 9 months because when you're 85 years old and you take care of the neighbor kid, that's your way of saying, I'm in. And I told my wife, the people that made the biggest impact on my life are the ones who've said, I'm in. And I said, I don't know how they do that. And my mom, don't tell her I said that. No, that was my wife I'm talking about. And I said, I think it'd be easier if you just keep your head down and keep your arms in. You don't have to get involved in anybody's life. And my wife says, it is easier to live like that. The problem is when you live like that, you don't touch anybody, you don't affect anybody, and you don't change anybody's story. And when we write our own stories, we tend to write really small stories. But she said, when you feel God whisper in your heart and you step into it and you say, I'm in, all of a sudden God starts writing the story and you stop writing the story and nobody writes a better story than God. And I said, like, how do my mom and dad know how to do that? How do Henry and Liz know how to do that? And my wife said, I think they knew how to do that because they loved a God who did this to them first and stepped into their story. And I'm so grateful that it was someone like you, an organization like yours, that stepped into my life to help my birth mom write a better story and to give me a story. And so I told my wife, I was like, man, we should live like that, you know? And she said, well, I've been doing it for a while. You can join me if you want to. And so for the next 2 years, my wife lives just like this, you know? And I stood right next to her like my Henry to her Liz kind of thing. And I was like, because I knew whatever was coming, I just knew it was going to hurt. And 2 years later, she screams at the house. And I run down to the other end of the hallway where she's in her office. And she's staring at a picture on the screen. And there's tears in her eyes. And I ran in and I looked at her. And she looks at me. And she looks at the screen. And then she looks at me. And she goes, well, what do you think? And I was like, I'm in. And 2 weeks later, we were in China. Should have been 6 months, but my wife's really good at paperwork. And we showed up in China and we adopted Mark Schultz. And this is the day she practiced to be an American before we came home. This is my all-time favorite picture. This is Ryan, who's now 12, Gus is 10, and Maya May is 8. I just got to tell you, she looks so cute in this picture, but she is like a Chinese grandmother at our house. And if she comes home from school and they're outside playing in the trees, she will open up the door and she'll go, where are my boys at? And they will come running because they're scared of her. And I think it's awesome. But you can't tell from this picture, but she doesn't have fingers on her left hand. And she comes from a place where they say, if you're not perfect, you don't belong. And so the first place you go is to the orphanage. And if you don't get taken out of the orphanage, then you go to the streets. Because if you're on the streets, they don't have to count you because people on the street don't count. And they just happened to send that picture to a girl in the United States who was answering her email that day like this. So she's all wrapped up like a little Chinese burrito, and it's the greatest day of my life. That's not even a food. And I'm bringing her back on the plane, and all we have to do, 17 hours on the plane, I'm holding her. All we have to do is get off the plane in Detroit and step down the jet bridge, and I put my foot down in Detroit, and she's an American citizen. And I'm walking down the jet bridge like somebody's about to be an American citizen. And we're getting there, and right before I get there, 2 Delta agents, ladies, step in front of us. And one of them says, you need to stop. I said, I need to stop. I need you to move because I got to put a toe down. I got an American citizen right here. I got a football. And she said, I need your baby. I said, you need my baby? I looked at my wife, and she didn't know, so I gave her my baby. And she took her. And she looked at her. And the other lady looked at her. And then she took her back. And I thought about where she'd been and what she'd been through and who she was and the place that she came from and what they thought of her. And this lady looks at her and leans in and kisses her on the head and says, "Baby girl, welcome home. I just wanted to be the first one to say I'm so glad you're here." Almost went Lee Greenwood in that place right there. Just proud to be an American. My wife called me 2 years later. I mean, we talked in between there. And she said, "What are you doing?" And I said, "You know, I'm in Wisconsin doing a concert tonight, Christmas concert. You know that because I left this morning from the house. I'll be home in the morning." And she said, "You're not coming home in the morning." And I said, "Oh, what's going on back there?" And she said, "I changed your ticket." And I said, "That's strange." And I said, where am I going?" And she said, "You're going to meet me in Kansas City." I said, "Kansas City? What's in Kansas City?" And my wife said, "A great story." So the next morning I got up and I flew to Kansas City and I got in the car and I pulled the car around and I waited for her and she got in the car. She got off the airplane in Kansas City and she put in the address to where we were going. And we drove through Kansas City, out the other side of Kansas City, until we came to a big white house that I've been in before. And we walked up some big Gone with the Wind steps that my parents had walked up before. And we walked into a room with a crib in it, much like the one I was in. And my wife walks up to the crib and she looks in. And before she could turn around and say, "Well," she said she looked behind her, and I'm in the doorway like this. Because I knew what my mom and dad knew. And I knew what Henry and Liz knew. And tonight, mostly importantly, I knew what you know, because you do it every day. You stand in the gap between life and death, and you meet women who have no place to go, who were scared and confused, and you meet them like this. I'm in. Even if nobody else is, I am, because I know God writes great stories, and he wants to write yours. And so this is my family now, and a couple years ago. To be honest with you, I'm glad I'm in a hotel tonight. I'll tell you that. If not just for one night to get energized before I head back tomorrow. But I look at this picture of my kids and I think two things. Number one, I can't believe my boys still think I'm the only one that can cut their hair. And number two, I think about my girl's story and how we were able to step into their story because somebody stepped in for us. But people were able to step into our story and show me how to do that because you all stepped into my story first. You all write stories every day. You don't keep your hands in, you don't keep your head down, you keep your arms out because that's what Jesus Christ did for you. And you mirror it to the world. And because of what you've done, I can't thank you enough because I'm here and so are these girls. And so I wasn't going to do this song. This song is not even finished, and you shouldn't do songs that aren't done. And but I don't care. I'm going to do it because I'm sure there's a table out there that's just itching to stand up after this. And I'm gonna make up a second verse here real quick. So it's like, which is also something you shouldn't do. You know, when you're playing something live. So this could be my last song, or maybe one more. I don't know. Anyway, depends how this one goes. Really, we'll see. So it's like, but anyway, I want to do this because I think it speaks so well to what you all do every day. So they're not gonna make it. That's what everyone says. The song's not done. It's not even recorded yet or out on the radio or anything. This is a dumb idea. But anyway, they're not gonna make it. That's what everyone says. The damage is done and their love has run dead. There's nothing to do now. It's just time to let go. No storybook ending as it comes to a close. She sits in a clinic, scared and alone. No one to talk to, she's got nowhere to go. She carries a life and a choice that she'll make. But there's a CareNet Pregnancy Resource Center waiting just down the way. 'Cause it turns out the stories that God loves to tell are the ones that we're certain won't turn out so well. But He loves rewriting our hopelessness into His glory. Yes, it turns out that God loves a comeback story. If you don't believe me, just remember that tune. They left Him for dead and they said it was through. Oh, but just 3 days later that stone rolled away, and there stood my Savior and everything changed. 'Cause it turns out the stories that God loves to tell are the ones that we're certain won't turn out so well. But He loves rewriting our hopelessness into His glory. It turns out that God loves a comeback story. Yes, it turns out that God loves a comeback story.